The neon sign hummed like a fly behind glass, turning Jason's face a bruised blue as the man weighed the ring on a tinny scale. Cash slid across the counter, thin, oily, too easy. He snatched it, crumpled bills warm from other hands, and breathed the lie he needed. I'll buy it back before she notices. Outside, rain and fryer grease scented the night. He shoved the pawn ticket deep, as if paper could bury guilt. Across town, Elena wiped lemon polish along the dresser, the small rituals that made a plain place feel honest. She lifted the lid of her mother's jewelry box. Hinges sighed, a breath from the past. The velvet slot was empty, a pale dust oval where the ring had slept. Her breath caught, her fingers hovered over absence, stupidly careful, as if she could smooth fabric back into faith. The room tilted, grief remembered its way in. She heard her mother as clearly as a kettle about to sing. A promise is heavier than gold. Not because it shines, but because it binds. Elena lowered her head over the little box and felt the weight of that sentence settle. The ring was not wealth, it was witness, vows into hands, hands into vows, 3 lives circling the same quiet center. Keys rattled, the door opened to cold air and cologne. Jason slid a pizza box onto the counter, tore a slice, and wandered down the hall. "Mom?" he called, mouth full. He leaned in, saw the open box, the velvet wound. Something flickered, then cooled. He shrugged. "It was just a ring. I needed cash. I'll fix it." He said fix the way people say later, like a bridge to nowhere. Elena set the rag down. The wish to shout rose and receded, a tide that remembered dignity. "It was never about shine," she said, voice steady. "It was about a promise you made to your grandmother." He smirked, spreading his hands like a salesman closing nothing. "Grandma's gone, Mom. She doesn't care." The casual cruelty of youth landed light, as if it weighed nothing. "She does," Elena whispered, and the floor of time shifted. She saw Rose's thin fingers tapping that lid the week before she died, a secretive smile inside the tiredness. "If the day ever comes, you'll know what to open. You'll know where to go." The memory struck like a key against glass. Somewhere, something waited, sealed. A message she hadn't been ready to face when grief was raw, written in the tidy hand that scolded and soothed. This wasn't over. Jason's shrug would have to meet a sentence sharpened in advance. Jason fanned the bills like a cheap magician and kissed the stack. "Relax, Mom. People sell things. We're not rich. It's practical." Pride made his voice ring hard, humility steadied hers. "Practical," she said, "would have been asking for help. Practical would have been keeping your word." He rolled his eyes. "It's small stuff." She looked at the dust halo, then at the tall boy who seemed somehow smaller. "Not to me," she said. "Not to who you could be." The house divided itself along invisible lines. Outside, bass thumped from a passing car, neon lived for the next quick trade. Inside, the old clock ticked like a judge with all the time in the world. Elena lifted the jewelry box and held it as you hold a sleeping child. "Go to bed," she said. "Tomorrow we'll talk." Alone, she traced the seam, found nothing, and still knew. Somewhere a sealed message waited to turn a smirk into silence. Morning would test love and patience. Morning came smelling like cinnamon and lemon polish, the kind of clean that tries to make a home stronger than its worries. The dented kettle breathed itself toward a whistle, and Elena held a thrift mug under the drip, catching coffee in a cup that still wore a chipped blue rose. Steam touched her face. Across the room, the small nicked jewelry box waited, lighter than it should be, as if absence could make wood hollow. She measured oats into a pot and pinched cinnamon between her fingers, brown snow on a modest breakfast. On the table, a stack of coupons lay paper-clipped and smoothed, little lifeboats cut from circulars, $2 off detergent, buy one get one beans, a battered loyalty card whose corners had learned patience. She loved routine because it paid attention to what mattered. She could make a week out of one chicken. She could turn leftover coffee into tomorrow's iced treat for Jason if he wanted it. He didn't. He padded in late, hoodie zipped, phone lit like a small mirror that always told him he was almost enough. A group chat bloomed across his screen. Manny flexing a lease agreement and the key fob of a car with more chrome than sense, Troy filming his limited edition sneakers in slow motion, the soul bright as a billboard, Lex flashing a watch that ticked like a countdown to debt. Their laughs came through as voice notes, loud, careless, buoyed by credit and belief. "Morning," Elena said, sliding a bowl toward him. "Eat before it cools." He looked at the oatmeal as if it had insulted him. "I'll grab something later. Manny's taking us out." He got the Beamer with the sport package. He said Beamer as if it proved a rival. "We can't afford later," she said gently. "We afford now." She pushed Cinnamon closer. The kettle finally whistled and settled, a small storm soothed. He scooped 3 grudging bites, then dropped the spoon. "Mom, no one does oatmeal. It's like old people food." He found his reflection in the dark window, adjusted his cap. "I gotta look right. People judge." "People always judge," Elena said. "But only some of them matter." He smirked, nodding toward the jewelry box. "Old things. Old values. You get stuck staring at them and the world passes you by." She wiped the table slowly, the lemon polish lifting a quiet shine. "Old values kept a roof over your head when the world tried to charge interest for air." He tapped the pawn ticket in his pocket without meaning to, then hid the gesture by pulling his hoodie lower. "I'll fix it," he muttered, like a charm against consequences. "I told you." She thought, but did not say, "You told me many things." The clock on the wall ticked past 8, nudging them toward their separate worlds. Elena's world was measured in lists. She packed a lunch in re-washed containers, slipped stacked coupons into her purse, and tied her hair back in a no-nonsense knot. The bus arrived with its usual sigh, and she took her usual seat behind the driver, hands folded over the bag that held yesterday's careful choices. Out the window, billboards promised a happiness by installment. She saw Jason's friend group outside a sneaker store, laughing under a banner that said Drop Day. She watched a boy she loved tilt himself toward their center as if their neon heat could thaw whatever had gone cold in him. At the assisted living kitchen, Elena's day warmed to its own rhythm, onions sweating in butter, trays clattering, Mrs. Whitcomb asking for extra applesauce because it remembers how to be sweet, Mr. Alvarez praying before soup like the steam carried it heavenward. Elena worked a double without complaint. Dignity, her mother used to say, is how you carry the weight when no one offers to help. She carried it with strong wrists and a soft voice, with a smile that told the old men their stories still mattered. On break, she spread her coupons on the table and circled a few more deals, whispering math under her breath. A young coworker scrolled and said, "You still clip those? They got apps now." Elena smiled. "Paper doesn't crash," she said, tapping a square for rice. "And it doesn't ask for permission." Jason's day glittered differently. Manny's lease car smelled like lemon-scented wipes and ambition. Bass shuddered the seats. Outside the tinted windows, the city gleamed like it had just washed its face. "We're hitting Mirage tonight," Manny said, drumming the wheel. "Bottle service, easy." Troy lifted his shoe onto his knee for the 5th time, filming the angle that made the logo sing. "Limited drop," he said. "Resell's crazy. You gotta spend to look like money." Lex slouched, gold chain winked. "Found a dude who'll float me a little." He laced the last words with bravado and worry. Jason nodded like he belonged. The borrowed jacket fit if he didn't breathe too deep. The borrowed swagger fit if he didn't think too long. When Manny asked about his mom, he shrugged. "She's stuck in the past. Keeps weird old stuff around like it's sacred." The word sacred crumbled a little in his mouth, but the car's music covered it. At home that night, Elena returned to a clean counter and a thin envelope of tips. She paid the electric bill before it could darken their evenings, set aside half for rent, and stretched the rest into a grocery list that looked like a prayer with bullets. She took the rag and smoothed lemon polish into the wood of the table until it shone enough to hold them both. Then she sat with the jewelry box. It was small and nicked, the finish rubbed at the corners, the little hinge clicking like a throat clearing before truth. She had loved this box since childhood, not for what it held but for what it meant. The ring inside had always been more than metal and stone. It was the family's heartbeat, quiet, steady, a circle that refused to break, beating in time with vows spoken in kitchens and, later, kept in hospital hallways. When times were thin, Rose would stroke the lid and tell Elena, "We are rich in what we refuse to sell." Elena lifted the lid and found only emptiness and the faint imprint where gold once slept. She closed it, opened it, closed it again, as if clicks could conjure presence. She felt the ache under her breastbone steady into resolve. Love does not look away when it's insulted, it stands its ground without shouting. When Jason breezed in, shoes squeaking, he flashed his friend's nights on his phone. "This is life," he said, as if it were a verdict. She watched the screen's blur of least light and saw cost written in fine print across his face. "It's fog," she said softly. "It looks like air until you drive into it." He rolled his eyes. "I'm not you, but Mum. I'm not living small." "Small," she said, "isn't the same as careful." He went to his room, music bleeding under the door. Elena sat in the quiet and listened for the old pulse that used to anchor this house. The box waited, the past knocking with a patient hand. Memory, when it's ready, opens like a door you thought was stuck. She could already smell Rose's kitchen, hear the kettle, see a younger Jason holding the ring in both hands as if it might jump. And tomorrow, she promised herself, she would open that door all the way. Memory opened like a door Elena had been leaning against without knowing, and warm air rolled out of it, cinnamon, soap, and the hiss of a kettle. Sunlight lay across Rose's linoleum in a bright rectangle, and dust motes danced like crumbs of blessing. At the old oak table, a boy with scraped knees and quick eyes turned a gold ring between his fingers, watching light collect and break. "Easy," Rose said, not scolding, only smiling with that tired softness that made truth feel like bread. "Hold it like you'd hold a secret." Jason cradled the ring in his small palm. The diamond flashed, then calmed, as if remembering itself. Elena, younger then, leaned in the doorway, heart already learning the beat of the life she wanted. Modest, steady, anchored by promises that didn't bend. "Your grandfather pawned it once," Rose said, rolling dough with clean, flowery hands, the heels of her palms strong from years of work. "Winter took customers, the bank took nerve, and the repair shop took on water it couldn't pay for. He walked to the pawn shop with my ring in his pocket and pride stuck in his throat." Jason looked up, alarmed. "He sold it." "He temporarily let it go," Rose answered, shaping the word like a lesson. "There's selling and there's saving. He thought he was saving us. The man behind the glass counted bills like a metronome, and your grandfather came home with cash that felt heavier than the ring had ever felt." She set the dough aside to rise, wiped her hands, and reached for the ring again, looping history around her finger. All that winter, he pulled double shifts fixing things nobody loved until they broke. Heaters, washers, hearts that had forgotten kindness. He took a night job sweeping floors at the bus depot. He didn't sleep much. He didn't complain. Elena remembered Joe in that season, the way he came home with cold in his joints and apology in his eyes. But she also remembered Rose meeting him at the door with a kiss and a warm towel, as if making a soft landing was strategy, not surrender. It had taught Elena that dignity wasn't fancy, it was faithful. Come spring, Rose went on, he walked back into that pawn shop with pay envelopes and a fresh haircut, and he bought this ring back. She kissed the metal like a small forehead. He cried, "Jason." Right there. The man behind the glass slid it over and your grandfather cried, right on Main Street, because he had returned what he had borrowed from our story. Jason's fingers trembled, and he reached again. Was the man mean? No, Rose said. He was a businessman, which can be another way of saying teacher if you're paying attention. He said, "Good to see a promise kept." Your grandfather said, "Good to feel like it into Jason's boy-warm palm. This belongs to our story, not to a cash drawer." The sentence struck the room like a bell, bright and exact. Jason closed his fingers over the circle as if it might escape. Elena's heart swelled, old fear and new faith mixing. If character had a shape, it would be this. Calloused hands passing a circle of metal and meaning from generation to generation, each affirming that value sits deeper than price. She thought, this is what I want for us. Not money without mercy, but mercy with its sleeves rolled. Rose lifted a brow, playful now. You think you can be its keeper, Jace? He straightened, a solemn little soldier. I can. I promise. I'll never let it go. He looked at Elena to see if the words landed, hungry for approval. They landed hard and sweet. She hugged him, felt his ribs, smelled school sweat and sugar, and believed him. Later that afternoon, they took the ring for a cleaning, a treat Rose allowed herself the way some people buy lottery tickets. Mr. Patel flicked on his lamp, the beam a careful sun. He lifted the loop and peered, humming the way good men hum when they are thinking kindly. Jason bounced on his toes. "Is it real?" he whispered, then flushed, embarrassed by the question his friends might have asked louder. Rose chuckled, that dry music Elena loved. Glass can dazzle in the dark, but only a real stone endures daylight. Mr. Patel smiled without looking up. "She's correct. Clarity is character. It shows when the light is honest." He set the ring beneath a tiny steamer, banishing kitchen grease and long history's fingerprints. The diamond woke without fanfare, it didn't need applause. Jason leaned in so close that Mr. Patel's sleeve brushed his cheek. "You take care of good things," the jeweler said quietly. "They take care of your memory later." On the walk home, the city shook off winter, and boys on new bikes flashed by like future temptations. Jason watched them and then looked down at the ring he had been allowed to hold again, seriousness returning like a coat he was still growing into. "Grandma," he said, "what if things get hard again?" On the stoop, Rose squeezed Elena's hand. "Hard days always return," she murmured, "but we meet them with work, not with selling our story." Jason nodded, pockets empty, palm warm, his promise bright as noon. Unaware of the neon weather gathering by Thursday, the app turned stingy. Hot zones on the delivery map cooled to pale gray, and the cheerful ping that used to pop like popcorn became a rare, apologetic tap. Jason biked 3 neighborhoods in a wind that kept finding his chest, watched orders flicker and vanish to faster hands, and ended 8 hours with a balance that wouldn't fill a tank if he had won. $27.11. He stared until the numbers felt like they were staring back. He told himself it was a glitch, a mood, a cloud passing over a sun made of algorithms. Tomorrow would surge. Tomorrow would apologize with a flood of orders and big tippers who lived in houses that smelled like new tile. He kicked the stand, shouldered his bike inside, and told Elena his legs were tired in a way that made him feel like a man, not a boy who was falling behind. Then Manny texted him a link to a pick service with neon promises, 5-leg parley, guaranteed locks, flip 100 into 1,000. The language smelled like cologne and desperation. Jason hovered, thought of the algorithm's cold shoulder, thought of proving himself with a screenshot of winnings and an easy dinner tab for his crew. He bought the picks. He watched the first game wobble, the second crumble, the third die on a missed field goal while his hopes stuck in his throat. By night's end, his 100 had been sliced into nothing by men he would never meet. The group chat that had been a brag parade turned quiet. He posted a meme to outrun the math. The laughs were quick and thin. Troy messaged about another sneaker drop, sure thing, quick flip, limited stock, and Jason said he was in before checking his balance. Pride didn't count dollars, it counted appearances. Pride said, "I'll have it by morning." Morning didn't cooperate. The app froze him out again. The sneaker raffle spit a sorry. He scraped together cash from a pocket of his jacket, coins winking like apologies, and handed them across a counter for a money order he could barely afford. Rent was a wall with no door. The clerk slid him a receipt that felt like failure cut to the size of a wallet. He folded it and pretended it was progress. Lex called at noon with a grin in his voice that didn't touch his eyes. "Got that little thing we talked about?" he asked, and the word sounded friendly the way a velvet rope sounds friendly until it refuses you. Jason swallowed. He was sure Lex would understand. "Give me a day." A low chuckle, polished. "Clock's ticking, Jay. I fronted you because you said you were quick. Don't make me look like a fool." The text followed the call, a winking emoji, a due amount, a timer GIF that looked like a smirk. Jason stared until the numbers doubled. He told himself he'd protect his mother from this noise. She worked enough. She deserved quiet. He was a man, men handled things. He paced the apartment, the dryer thumping a wet load into submission, the sound traveling through thin walls like a heartbeat losing patience. Every sound stacked, the upstairs faucet that never quite stopped, the hallway baby practicing grief, the old clock insisting on order nobody paid. Jason opened the fridge and found a jar of pickles, half an onion, a knob of butter, and a note Elena had tucked into leftovers. "Eat, please." Pride read it as pity. He closed the door and told himself he wasn't hungry. The phone buzzed again. The buzz found Bone. He thought of asking her for help, pictured the crease between her eyes when she did math at the table, the coupons laid like cards in a game that refused bluffing. He couldn't put his foolishness into that careful world. He called it protection. It was also fear. He imagined her disappointment like a light switched on, showing mess he had arranged in secret. Better to clean it up before she saw. His gaze kept sliding to her bedroom, to the dresser with the jewelry box he'd seen 1,000 times without seeing. The memory of the ring flashed. Circle, stone, story. He told himself it wasn't stealing if he meant to buy it back. It was borrowing from tomorrow. Tomorrow owed him, it always had. He walked to the doorway and stopped, hands buzzing like the phone. The dryer thumped. Thump. Thump. Temptation set the rhythm. He tried to hustle alternatives. He listed his jacket on a resale app. Lowball offers arrived like gnats. He messaged Troy about flipping a pair from last season. Troy sent back a shrug emoji and a link to a forum where kids half Jason's age spoke in codes he didn't know. He thought of a payday loan, but the terms read like a track built for the outside in a car that wasn't his, idling like a dare. He didn't come in. He called. "Step out." Jason went, the air tasting like rain, like metal. Lex leaned on the roof and smiled with all his teeth. The smile stayed, the eyes didn't. "Tomorrow," Jason said, before Lex could speak. "You'll have everything tomorrow." Lex patted his shoulder twice, friendly, then let his hand stay a second longer than friendly. When the car slid away, it left a smear of tail light across a puddle like a warning flare. Jason went back upstairs and stood in the doorway to Elena's room. She wasn't home yet. The apartment breathed her absence, lemon polish cooling on the table, the kettle's round belly reflecting soft light. He crossed to the dresser and touched the jewelry box. The wood was warm, the hinge a whisper. He lifted the lid an inch, then closed it. Outside, the neon down the block hummed "We Buy Gold." He heard it through walls, like a promise failing. The neon over the storefront hiccuped between promises, "We Buy Gold" sputtering so fast it looked nervous. Rain had not started yet, but the street wore the sheen it gets right before, as if the sky had already breathed on it. Jason stood outside the glass door and rehearsed the lie until it sounded like a plan he could live with. Borrow, not steal. Fix, not fail. 30 days, maybe less. In, out, back. He pulled the handle. The bell chimed, a crisp, courtroom note that made him want to check his pockets for guilt. Inside smelled like metal polish and ammonia, old carpet and new regret. Glass cases ran the length of the room, little aquariums where bracelets slept and watches counted seconds like coins. Behind the counter, Mr. Patel looked up from a ledger and blinked once, as if clearing dust from memory. "Evening," Mr. Patel said. His voice was easy, the kind you trusted to default to kindness. He folded the ledger closed with 2 careful fingers. The man had the grace of someone who knew the difference between touching and taking. Jason felt 12 years old for a flash, elbows too sharp, conscience too loud. He flipped his hood back and put the ring on the felt pad like an apology he didn't want to own. "I need a loan," he said, and made sure the next sentence came out steady. "It's mine." Mr. Patel's eyes went to the ring and softened as if recognizing a face in a crowd. The diamond sat small and stubborn, the gold band nicked where years had knocked against cabinets and habits. He did not touch it right away. "Do you have identification, Jason?" he asked, already reaching for the scale, professional habit covering personal recognition. He had cleaned this ring at this counter under this lamp more than once. He had seen Rose's hands tremble and steady around it. Jason slid his ID across the glass before the questions sharpened. "It's mine," he repeated. Ownership sounded like armor when you said it with enough syllables. Mr. Patel turned the lamp on. The light found the diamond the way daylight finds truth, without drama. He set the ring in the little dish on the scale. The digital display blinked and settled. He scribbled numbers. Jason pretended not to watch. He did not ask about Elena. He did not say Rose's name. He cleared his throat gently, a sound like a hinge deciding to be kind. "We can do a pawn," he said. "Loan against the piece. You can redeem it within 30 days plus grace. Keep the ticket. Don't lose it." Jason nodded, pulse syncing with the machine's faint hum. 30 days. He pictured a calendar he never used filling with solutions he didn't yet have. "That's fine," he said. "I'll have it back before then." Mr. Patel lifted the loop and considered the stone that had sat in their family like a quiet judge. He was not the law, he was a witness. "You know," he said without looking up, "some things carry more than metal weight. But paperwork is paperwork." He tapped the form. "Sign here and here." The pen felt too slick. Jason wrote his name and watched letters become commitments. The bell over the door tinkled as someone passed outside. The sound felt like a verdict stamped in rubber. He swallowed. He had brought the story to a counter and translated it into ounces and rates. He would translate it back later. He had 30 days to become the man who could do that. While Jason dug his phone from his pocket to silence a buzz from Lex, Mr. Patel turned, opened a drawer, and took out a small envelope with a name written in tidy, looping script. He slid his thumb across the flap as if greeting an old friend, then stapled it to the corkboard behind the register, low and to the left where he kept things that mattered. When he faced forward again, his expression had returned to the neutral patience shopkeepers wear when storms blow through. "All right," he said. "Here's the ticket. Loan amount is here, interest here. Keep it dry." He counted bills, crisp edges whispering against each other, and laid them in Jason's waiting hand. The cash was colder than he expected, the way metal feels even in a warm room. It sat heavy, heavier than a ring, because money carries its own gravity when it's meant for debt. Jason's fingers closed, guilt and relief arguing under his skin. He resisted the urge to grab the ring back and say forget it. He resisted the urge to explain himself to a man who didn't need his biography. "Thanks," he said, small word for a large mistake. "You can bring it home," Mr. Patel said quietly, eyes still on the paperwork. "Some things want to be where they were promised." He pushed the ticket across, meeting Jason's gaze only for a breath. Compassion lived there, but also a boundary. He would not break the law. He would not break a boy. He would record the date, store the ring, and keep time better than any watch in the case. Jason nodded and forced his mouth into the shape of a grin. "I'll see you in a week." He said it like a boast, like he was the kind of person who kept easy promises to himself. He slid the ticket deep into the belly of his hoodie pocket, deeper still than intention, a paper anchor in a sea he pretended he knew. He gave the ring one last glance, smaller under the lamp, smaller than his problem, and pushed through the door. The bell chimed again, verdict rendered. Outside, the air smelled like fryer oil and rain coming, pennies on the tongue and salt from a late bus exhaust. Neon bled into the puddled sidewalk, painting his shoes with hurry. He counted the money twice as he walked, doing math for the 9th time. What to hand Lex, what to float on the phone bill, what little to keep so he didn't look broke in front of Manny. Each calculation felt like shaving a sliver off himself. He texted Lex, "Got it," before the streetlight changed, and the reply came back fast, "Knew you would." The words should have felt like release. They landed like rope tossed across his shoulders. Manny's ping followed, a flyer for Mirage, a promise of loud lights and loud laughs. Jason typed maybe next time, erased it, typed can't tonight, erased that, sent a thumbs up that meant nothing. The table waited. Elena wiped the dresser in slow, practiced strokes, lemon polish brightening the grain like a memory returning to itself. The dented kettle began to breathe in the kitchen, a small animal gathering courage. She straightened the picture of Rose, then reached for the nicked jewelry box as she had 1,000 times, tapped the hinge with a thumb, lift, listen for that little sigh of wood. Her fingers hovered, then trembled. The velvet slot was an absence with edges, a pale ring of dust where gold used to sleep. Air thinned. She could hear her mother's voice, steady as a prayer over a sink full of dishes. A promise is heavier than gold. Not because it shines, because it holds. She set the rag down, closed the box, and carried it to the kitchen. The scarred kitchen table waited with its history, the cigarette burn her father never confessed to, the gouge from Jason's second-grade diorama, the ghost of a heat ring from a pot Rose refused to use a trivet for because stew belongs at the center. Elena placed the box in that circle, sat, and folded her hands until they stopped shaking. "Jason," she called, not loud. The kettle sighed into a whistle, then quieted when she turned the knob. Footsteps dragged, a door clicked, a phone chimed like a bird stuck indoors. He came in with his hood up and set the phone face down as if that made it invisible. "What's up?" He opened a cabinet just to close it, moving things the way guilty boys and bored men do. Elena gestured to the chair. He flopped into it, legs too long for manners, tapping a beat that didn't match the soft clock tick. She slid the jewelry box toward him and lifted the lid. "Where's your grandmother's ring?" The question sat in the room like a glass of water nobody wanted to drink. He glanced at the velvet and shrugged, eyes flicking away. "Probably where you left it." "I left it there," she said. "Now it's not." "Maybe it slipped," he offered, an airy laugh already prepared. "Down the back of the dresser? Into a sock? Those boxes have corners." He leaned, peered theatrically into the empty slot, and smirked. "It's small, Mom. Tiny. Chill." The phone buzzed. He put a hand over it as if it were a small animal needing calming. Elena watched the gesture, then his face, then the swell of his hoodie pocket. The dryer in the hall thumped a wet load toward dryness, steady as a warning drum. She inhaled the house, lemon, cinnamon, the faint metallic echo of her fear, and kept her voice level. "Look at me." He did, briefly. "Why are you making this a thing?" He lifted both hands, showing innocence the way a magician shows empty palms while hiding coins. "We've got bigger problems. Rent. My job's dead this week. You know how it is." His knee jiggled. The phone buzzed again, more insistent. He flipped it, scanned, and flipped it back. "I'll fix it," he said, like a line he knew played well. "If it's gone, I'll fix it." "It's not a leaky faucet," she said. "It's not a broken chair you can glue and swear won't wobble. It's your grandmother's ring." She heard rose in her throat and let her speak. "You promised to keep it safe." His gaze hardened around the edges. He laughed, meaner this time. That was kid stuff. He reached for the sugar bowl, spooned sweetness into a mouth that suddenly tasted bitter. "Why do you cling to old junk? We're not museum people." "It isn't junk," Elena answered, every syllable ironed. "It's our story in a circle. Your grandfather once." He cut her off with a slice of his hand. "Don't start the pawnshop fairy tale. Times change." He slouched deeper, performing indifference like it would catch on if he did it long enough. The dryer thumped. The kettle breathed on its unlit burner. The upstairs neighbor's TV leaked a courtroom show with a gavel that kept falling on strangers. He kept glancing at the phone, and she watched the way his mouth went tight each time it flashed. "Who's calling?" she asked mildly. "That can't wait while we talk about your grandmother?" His jaw shifted. "Nobody." The word tried for bored, landed on cornered. He bit the inside of his cheek, then smiled as if he'd remembered his script. "Even if it's missing, why are we acting like this ends the world? It's a ring. You've said it yourself, we can't eat diamonds." Her eyes found his and didn't blink. "We eat because vows held," she said. "We sleep here because promises did not get pawned to the first pretty problem." The smirk answered first, then the boy who was tired of feeling less than. He pushed his chair back so it squealed the floor. "You care more about a dead woman's trinket than your live son." The sentence cracked like a plank. It wanted to be a victory. It sounded like a wound. Elena did not flinch. Her voice cooled to a steel edge that could trim truth from noise. "I care about the promise you made." The words landed between them and stood upright. For a second, he looked smaller, as if the room had grown and he had not. Pride stiffened him back up. He scoffed, dragged his palm across the table, felt the old scars like braille he refused to read. "You always make things moral," he muttered. "It's money, Mom. It buys breathing room." That ring was sitting there doing nothing. "It was holding us together," she said. Quietly, like good things do. He blew air through his teeth, grabbed his phone, and stood. The chair legs hit the floor hard. "I'm done talking." He snatched his jacket off the chair back and shoved his arms into it like fighting sleeves. "I'll fix it, okay? I said I would. The door frame clipped his shoulder. The door bit back when he slammed it. The hallway echoed, then softened, the way a bruise does after the first throbbing. Elena stayed at the table, hands flat, breathing until her chest stopped trying to climb out of itself. Tears collected, then reconsidered. Grief had taught her not to waste water. She closed the jewelry box and put her palm on it, feeling nothing but wood and the heat of her own insistence. Love, she thought, is not blind. It sees and stays. It doesn't let lies get comfortable in its kitchen. Her heart hurt like a muscle being trained. Fine. Let it grow. She stood and checked the dresser again. Beneath scarves, behind stacked sweaters, under the lace doily Rose had insisted made even cheap would feel respected. Nothing but the heavy clarity of loss. In her mind, a door creaked. The last week with Rose, the wry smile, the hand tapping that box. If the day ever comes, you'll know what to open. You'll know where to go. Elena pressed her fingers against the seam of the memory. She washed a cup to have something to complete. Soon. The kettle caught a flame and hummed toward a boil. She chose the black dress Rose called sensible and hung it over a chair. Tomorrow would smell like lilies and suit wool, taste like lukewarm coffee and shared anecdotes, feel like hands gripping her elbow and saying the same soft sorry. Ms. Chen would read the will with that lawyerly kindness that kept hard facts from cutting. Elena would stand and listen and do math with her heart. What was left, what was owed, what could still be mended. She dried the cup, placed it upside down, and sat again. The table scars were familiar as her own. She touched the cigarette burn, the diorama gouge, the ghost ring. All right, she told the empty room, we're not done. Resolve settled, simple as a folded napkin. Whatever this costs me, pride, peace, the old picture I keep of my boy, I will pay it. I will find the truth, and I will not shout while I do. Outside, someone laughed too loud. Inside, Elena lifted the jewelry box and tucked it beneath her arm, as if sheltering a child from weather. In the morning, condolences and clauses would meet. Somewhere in the careful language, she hoped, lay a thread to pull. Lilies sweetened the air until it felt heavy, and the carpet swallowed footsteps the way the grieving swallow words. The funeral home's lighting flattened everything to a polite kindness. Elena stood beside the closed casket with a paper cup of coffee cooling in her hand and the ache of an absence that had shape. She touched the spot on her ring finger where habit sometimes made her twist something that wasn't there. The small nicked jewelry box had gone into her purse this morning out of instinct. She could feel its corners against her hip like a heartbeat that had lost its rhythm. People came in waves. Neighbors with weather in their faces. Women from church who knew how to carry casseroles and secrets. A pair of nurses from the hospice hugged Elena with the softness of those who had practiced mercy. Your mother told jokes even on the hard nights, one said. Elena smiled into a tissue. She didn't like for sorrow to get smug. Jason hovered near the back, black tie loosened, borrowing solemnity like a jacket a size too large. His phone pulsed his pocket. He checked it in small, guilty sips. Manny's photo of a champagne bottle, Troy's sneakers propped on leather, Lex's short text, clock. He slid the device away and glanced at the closed casket as if it were a box labeled fragile someone else would carry. When Aunt Mara tried to pull him into a story about the time Rose taught him to make pancakes, he laughed too loud and escaped toward the cookie table. Miss Chen arrived without calling attention to herself. A black suit that fit as if it had waited for this day, hair smooth, eyes the kind that listen. She took Elena's hands in both of hers. Your mother planned with love, she said. She kept things simple. The phrase simple soothed Elena, the way a hand smooths a wrinkled sheet. We can read the will after the luncheon, Ms. Chen added. It won't take long. As condolences thinned into small talk and plates, Elena carried napkins, refilled coffee, accepted remarks that sounded borrowed from a book of necessary sentences. When she caught Jason's profile, jaw set, mouth twitching around impatience, something inside her leaned toward suspicion the way a plant leans toward a window. He met her eyes once. For a second he looked 12, lost on a crowded playground. Then pride found him again, and he looked away. Ms. Chen's office smelled faintly of orange oil and ink. Diplomas watched from the wall. A jade plant held its own small piece on the sill. They sat at a round table instead of a desk. I don't like to read wills like proclamations, Ms. Chen said, and Elena felt the room exhale. Jason sat slouched, one ankle bouncing, his phone face down but not quiet. He had practiced a neutral expression in mirrors. It kept cracking. Ms. Chen opened a flat folder and began, voice a clean line. I, Rose Alvarez, being of sound mind, leave my love and gratitude to those who stood with me. A pause, a breath that felt like roses. To the hospice where I was cared for with dignity, I leave a small fund, to be named the Lemon Bar Comfort Fund, for treats on long nights. Elena laughed softly despite herself. That was her mother. To my daughter, Elena, Ms. Chen continued, I leave the contents of my recipe box, 3 quilts, and any modest savings left in my account, because she knows how to multiply small things. Elena felt heat rise in her face. She did know. She had learned from the best. And to my grandson, Jason, Ms. Chen said, and the air found its own hush, I leave what I have set aside for him, a sum to help him begin again, but it will wait behind a test of trust. Jason's head tilted, disbelief and interest meeting. Ms. Chen read the clause exactly, careful as cutting fabric. If the ring is ever mishandled, lost, sold, pawned, or treated like mere metal, retrieve what I left with our jeweler. After that, Ms. Chen will advise. Jason snorted, then swallowed the sound too late. A test, he said, trying for amused. Seriously? He went for scoff, came out thin. Color shifted in his face like weather flicking through. Elena watched the flicker. It wasn't mockery. It was alarm. She kept her face still, only her fingers tightening on the seam of her skirt. Ms. Chen's gaze moved gently from one to the other. It's what she wanted. She said to remind you that promises carry more weight than gold. Her words, not mine. Elena heard her mother speaking through a legal throat and pressed her lips together before grief could wander into anger. Jason leaned back, smiled with too many teeth. The ring is fine, he said, casual as a man ordering dessert. This is just dramatic. The word rattled on the table like a coin. He reached for his phone and stopped halfway, as if the motion itself betrayed him. Our jeweler, Elena repeated quietly. The phrase sat in her mouth like a key she'd forgotten she owned. There was only one person Rose ever called that, Mr. Patel, with the careful hands and the humming. Elena pictured the shop's bell, the lamp, the loop. She filed the thought away without moving her eyes from the folder. Ms. Chen finished the few remaining lines, names of cousins to receive a brooch, the request for hymns Elena already knew, and closed the file. Any questions? She asked. Elena wanted to ask a few for her own heart. Why did you have to go? Why didn't I press harder about that smile last week? Instead, she said, thank you. She'd be pleased you read it like that. Jason stood too quickly, chair scraping. So, we're done. His voice carried impatience, gentling the words, come see me with the item from the jeweler, and we'll go from there. She looked at Jason a second longer than necessary, not accusing, only weighting him into honesty he didn't possess yet. Outside, sunlight broke through a thin cloud, laying a bright stripe across the hallway carpet. Elena remembered Rose's wry line in Mr. Patel's shop. Glass can dazzle in the dark, but only a real stone endures daylight. She looked at Jason in that daylight and saw the dazzle on his skin, saw how it didn't sink into him the way truth does. On the way home, the car rode quiet except for a rattle in the glove box. Jason tuned the radio to a station that taught the air how to shrug. Elena watched the city scroll by in rectangles. Pawn shops, payday loans, a sandwich board that read "We buy gold" in a yellow that meant hunger, not sunshine. She kept the words "our jeweler" in her pocket like a smooth stone, and she kept her suspicions the way a good cook keeps a low flame, steady, patient, waiting for something to boil without burning. Back at the apartment, condolences turned into leftovers on a plate and a pair of black shoes kicked under the chair. Jason shut his door, and the bass under it tried to sound like relief. Elena changed into a sweater and rolled up her sleeves. The dryer thumped in the hall, a faithful, nagging drum. She felt exhaustion settle over her like a thin blanket and refused its invitation to sleep through what mattered. She placed the jewelry box on the table, set Ms. Chen's card beside it, and smoothed the paper with 2 fingers. If the ring is ever mishandled, retrieve what I left with our jeweler. She whispered the sentence to the room to hear how it felt. It felt like a thread waiting for her hand. Soon enough, she told herself, the world would give her something to tie it to. The machine in the hallway turned and turned, patient as truth. The pawn ticket fell out of Jason's hoodie like a small white fish slipping a net, flapping once against the washer's lip before landing at Elena's feet. She bent automatically to scoop lint and receipts from the floor. The washer thumped in its old, patient rhythm. The wad of paper was damp at the edges, ink bled blue like a bruise. She smoothed it over her knee, and the letters rose in sharp relief, Patel Jewelers. Her stomach dropped as if the machine had suddenly shifted cycles without warning. Below the name, her eyes found the description, 14K gold band, single round stone, minor scuffs. The words felt clinical, like a doctor's note that refused to know the patient. She read the date, last night, and a lump moved up her throat so slowly she thought it would choke her. The numbers for the loan amount and the interest looked like they had been tattooed on her palm. 30 days. Grace period. Ticket number. She could not swallow the shape of it. She sat on the lid of the dryer to keep from falling, listening to its soft roar. Ms. Chen's sentences marched through her head, polished and polite. If the ring is ever mishandled, retrieve what I left with our jeweler. Our jeweler. The ticket in her hand said the words like a bell. Elena closed her eyes and saw the shop's lamp, Mr. Patel's steady fingers, Rose's smile that had always seemed to know more than she said. The machine clicked off. Silence wrapped the hallway. Elena folded the ticket, then unfolded it, as if obedience might reverse time. Her breath steadied into the kind of calm that had carried her through everything else. Paperwork, morphine schedules, 2 a.m. worries no one could help with. She slid the ticket into her pocketbook as carefully as if it were a fragile photograph and grabbed her sweater. The bell over Patel Jewelers' door chimed a sound she had heard in dreams, metallic, tidy, refusing drama. The neon sign hummed a steady word now, the sputter resolved. Inside, glass cases shone like lakes at noon. Mr. Patel looked up, and in his eyes Elena saw recognition and the kind of respect that doesn't ask for applause. Elena, he said, and her name in his mouth sounded like community. I am sorry for your loss. She nodded, unable to do more with her face without breaking. She placed both hands on the counter to keep them from reaching for the ring like a mother grabbing a child from traffic. Did my son, she couldn't say sell. It wouldn't leave her tongue. Bring something in last night? Mr. Patel's gaze softened the way cloth softens a sharp edge. He came, he said simply. He did not make her finish the sentence. And yes, he pawned the ring. He turned slightly and reached underneath the counter to a corkboard where Elena saw, for the first time, an envelope pinned low among receipts. He removed it with reverence, as if plucking a bird from a snare. Your mother left this with me some months ago, he said. Instructions to give it to you only if the ring was sold or pledged. The envelope was cream, old-fashioned, her mother's looping hand across it, for Elena. Open only if the ring is sold. Rose had underlined only twice. Elena touched the script with a fingertip. The paper was warm from the store's lights, but the glue line at the flap felt cool, tight as a sealed wound. She wanted to tear it, to force the truth to speak. She also wanted to press it to her heart and pretend the words would rearrange into a better sentence if she waited. Is it? She started, and Mr. Patel understood the question she could not finish. Safe, he said. In the back, not on display. The law gives a window for redemption. I will honor that, and more if I can. But interest ticks like a metronome, and after a week I must formalize the notice. He looked at her, not as a creditor, but as a neighbor. I can hold any movement for 7 days. Then the system moves whether I like it or not. 7 days. 7 dinners. 7 morning coffees in the chipped blue rose cup. 7 nights of hearing the dryer's thump and knowing time was copying its beat. Elena nodded, grateful and wounded at once. Thank you, she said. Gratitude always seemed such a thin blanket for the weather life brought. Can I redeem without the ticket? She pulled the damp half-mangled slip from her purse. I found this in the corner of his mouth. You know the piece. You know its history. I know you. We can manage. He wrote the loan number on a notepad in his deliberate hand and slid it toward her. Bring a photo ID and the amount due. If that is difficult, Speak to me before the last day. Your mother and I, we had an agreement in spirit, if not on paper. He lifted the envelope again. And this may help you decide your next step. Elena held the envelope as one holds something that contains light. It weighed almost nothing, but her forearms ached as if she had been carrying buckets down a long hall. She planned, Elena whispered, both humiliated and rescued by the thought that Rose had anticipated this particular failure. Rose, who had taught her to sew buttons back on before shirts fell apart. Rose, who had seen the seam fraying in her grandson and left thread. I suspected your mother would outthink us all, Mr. Patel said, a smile passing like a small boat across serious water. Then he sobered. Your son looked hunted. That does not excuse him, but it explains the speed with which he lied. He did not say the word to wound, he said it to clean infection. Homeward, she carried it, pulse matching. The envelope lay on the kitchen table like a seed with weather inside it. It wasn't heavy, but the room seemed to bend around it. Elena ran a thumb along the cool, glued seam and read her mother's hand again. For Elena. Open only if the ring is sold. The house listened. The kettle, the old clock, the dryer at rest as if even it understood ceremony. She waited until Jason came home, because some doors should be opened with witnesses. He slipped in late, shoulders tight, eyes busy and avoiding. We need to watch something, she said, and slid the cream envelope into the light. His face stiffened, then performed a shrug. She didn't argue with the shrug. She fetched the battered laptop, the one with the keyboard polished by bills and emails from the hospice, and eased the tiny thumb drive into its slot. A folder opened on the screen, Rose_Kitchen. A single file, a date from months ago. Elena clicked. Warm light flooded their small world. Rose appeared on the screen at her kitchen table, the exact worn wood, the exact dented kettle in the background, lemon bars cooling on a rack as if grief and sweetness had always learned to share a counter. Her eyes were lit like she'd hidden a joke under the sugar. If you're watching, Rose said, voice steady as soup, the ring has left our hands, and that's all right. Elena's breath hitched. Jason flinched. Rose lifted the ring into frame, and light touched it the way morning touches a quiet street. I switched the diamond years ago. What you sold, Jason, was a decoy. Jason's mouth fell open, a silent, grateful shock and a fresh shame tangled together. Grandma, he whispered to a screen that couldn't answer anything but everything. Elena pressed her palm flat on the table, feeling the grain steady her. Rose smiled a little. The first time your grandfather brought this back from the pawn shop, he promised our story would not be bought again. Later, when you were small and I saw the world getting louder, I had Mr. Patel help me. We set a glass that dazzles nicely in a dim room. The real stone, the one that has seen births and goodbyes, I tucked away where daylight could measure it. She leaned forward, conspiratorial, loving. Go to the old singer. Yes, the black machine with the gold decals, the one that took my fingers where they needed to go when money was short and pants were long. Open the little side door. You'll find the bobbin case. Inside, wrapped in wax paper and a square of grey felt, is our diamond. Elena's hand flew to her mouth. The singer sat in her bedroom against the wall, a faithful weight that hummed of hems turned and costumes made for school plays. Jason stood, halfway between running and refusing. She's messing with us, he muttered weakly, but hope had already snuck its foot in his chest. Rose's voice deepened, not unkind. Jace, if you're watching, breathe. I love you enough to tell you the truth without ribbon. Glass can dazzle in the dark, but only a real stone endures daylight. I want you in daylight. So here is my last surprise, and my last set of terms. She slid a page into view, boxes drawn in her wonky ruler line. If the ring is mishandled, you will make it right. First, bring Mr. Patel every penny due and apologize with your eyes level. Second, give to the place that gave to me. Serve at the hospice for a season. Hold hands. Mop floors. Listen. Learn what is heavy and how to carry with dignity. Miss Chen will keep count. When you have done both, she will release your inheritance and the instructions for setting the real stone. If you choose not to, the money goes to the Lemon Bar Comfort Fund in my name. She tapped the counter, 3 gentle knocks. No tricks. No way around. Character or cash, You choose which one you want first. The video breathed for a beat. In the background, the kettle began its song, memory intruding like an old neighbor, and Rose laughed quietly. Elena, my girl, you know where the singer sits. Take care of what must be cared for. Don't let shame do all the talking. Shame is loud and stupid. Love is quiet and stubborn. Trust love. The screen froze on her, letting the steam brush her face, then brightened again. One more thing, she said softly, eyes shining in the way only truth can make them shine. The real stone has a scratch at 9 o'clock, small as a comet. I used to line it up with my knuckle and think of all the directions we could still go. When the time is right, Miss Chen has a letter telling you how to set it so that scratch points forward. She winked. Daylight. The video ended the way a prayer ends, not with a bang but with a return to breathing. The laptop's fan whirred. Jason backed away from the table, then forward, indecisive as a tide. She knew. The words barely existed. Elena stood, legs shaky. Come, she said, and the syllable sounded like a rope. They went to the bedroom. The singer waited, black enamel dulled and beautiful, its gold scrollwork worn by years of worry turned into hems. Elena knelt and opened the little metal door. The smell of machine oil and old thread rose like a forgotten hymn. Her fingers found the bobbin case, cool and oval, and something softer behind it. She pinched and drew out a tiny bundle, wax paper, gray felt, tape yellowed to the color of tea. Jason crouched. He couldn't breathe right. Elena unwrapped layers the way she had unwrapped him from sweaters as a child after snow, carefully, with the kind of attention love keeps even when frustrated. A glint, then a glow. The diamond, bigger than memory made it, sober and bright. She held it under the lamp, and there it was, the scratch at 9, a comet poised. Jason swore, softly, not in anger but awe. His eyes watered. I sold glass. The confession came out before its time, a seed cracking. I sold glass. Elena didn't answer victory into that moment. She let relief do the first work, then laid the stone into its felt again, as if tucking a baby. We'll keep her safe. She met his eyes. We have 7 days. The pawn ticket, he began, instinctively reaching for the pocket where paper had lived. He stopped. He remembered Elena had found it. He remembered every lie. The phone buzzed from his room, a little viper. He didn't move. Elena carried the felt bundle back to the table, set it in a clean saucer, and placed Rose's envelope beside it, empty now and still full. She opened the note card they hadn't read yet. The same boxes Rose had shown appeared in ink, redeem ring. Apologize to Mr. Patel. Serve hospice, 50 hours, Ms. Chen to sign. Final meeting, instructions for the setting. In the margin, Rose had written a joke only they would understand. Don't forget to bring lemon bars. Bribes help. Jason laughed, one ragged sound, then folded. He pressed his fists to his eyes and sat before he fell. I can't fix all of it, he said. I don't know how. You start with the first box, Elena said. Then the next. She touched the scratch on the stone with a nail. Forward. He nodded, a boy agreeing to a mountain. The phone buzzed again. He let it. The house felt different around them, less like a trap, more like a trailhead. On the screen, the last frame of Rose's face lingered, patient as daylight. Elena closed the laptop and reached for her purse, where Mr. Patel's card waited with numbers and mercy. Tomorrow, she said, we go see him. Jason swallowed. He thought of neon and glass, of the way he had said it's just a ring. He thought of a hospice hallway he'd only ever walked at visiting speed. He looked at his mother and at the comet scratch pointing toward a country he had never entered, responsibility. He nodded once, twice. Outside, the night pressed its forehead to the window, listening. Inside, the stone caught the kitchen light and held it without blinking. The clock started counting their 7 days in a new voice. And in the hush, his pride, loud and stupid, took one half step back, clearing a path for the next hard thing. The laptop screen held Rose's last frame like a candle that wouldn't blow out. Jason's color drained as if the light had drawn it from him. He braced hands on the table, then slid down the chair until his knees met the floor. Oxygen came in shards. The saucer with the wrapped diamond sat between them, small as a truth you can finally touch, and he hated it and loved it in the same breath. "I sold glass," he said again, and anger rose through shame like heat through a cracked vent. "I sold our story for a handful of bills and a lie about being smart." He slammed the heel of his hand against his thigh. "She knew I'd blow it. She knew." The fury turned inward, finding the soft parts first. "I betrayed her for nothing." Elena kept her seat, shoulders tight but voice quiet. Tears gathered and did not fall, held back by something steadier than pride. She wanted to reach for him, and she wanted to let the gravity do its work. "Not for nothing," she said. "For a lesson she loved you enough to prepare." She swallowed. "Tell me the rest, Jace." He looked at the door, at Expe, then at the stone. Honesty chose for him. Words came ragged. The app dried up. "I paid for a pick service like an idiot. Lost it fast. Then I told Lex I could flip a pair I never won. He floated me anyway. I gave him part of the pawn cash last night. I kept enough to look normal so my friends wouldn't smell blood." He grimaced. "I still owe him, and he's got that smile that means other people behind him. Phone's due. Rent's late. I kept telling myself I'd fix it before you noticed." "How much?" she asked, not sharp. He listed amounts, each number a stone in a deepening pocket. "And the ticket?" He pointed at her purse. "You found it." She nodded. "Was there anything else you didn't tell me?" He closed his eyes. "I told Manny we'd be at Mirage. I backed out. They think I'm soft. I treated you like a wall to lean on while pretending I was a door." He shook his head, disgusted. "I lied to Mr. Patel's face." Elena breathed. The kitchen seemed to pull with her. "Then we start where the damage began," she said. "You can't buy back respect. You earn it. With the truth, with receipts, with hours nobody sees." She tapped Rose's list. "First, we redeem the ring and apologize to Mr. Patel. Second, we face Lex in daylight and set a plan that doesn't involve more lies. Third, we call Ms. Chen and the hospice and begin." Jason's spine balked. Lex won't love daylight. He'll want to meet outside the club, make it a show. Elena's mouth softened without losing its line. "Then insist on a diner at noon, under waitress eyes and coffee pots. If he refuses, we file a police report for harassment and let grown systems do their job." He stared. "You do that?" "I'd prefer not to," she said. "I'd prefer you to stand up." His gaze went to the saucer again. The comet scratch seemed to point directly at his chest. He exhaled, shoulders slumping, boy falling out of man's clothes. "Okay," he said. "I choose the hard road." He pulled his phone and typed with shaking thumbs, "Need to meet tomorrow noon. Diner on Maple. Plan to pay you back. No games." He hit send and felt a bruise bloom somewhere private. "I can sell the jacket," he added quickly, before courage cooled. "And the console. The sneakers too. I'll cancel the gym, the streaming, everything that makes me feel more than I am. I'll do extra routes, even if the app hates me." He looked up. "I'll give you the pawn cash I kept before the deadline. I want the first dollars to go where the wound started." Elena nodded once. "I will help, but I won't empty myself to pad your lesson. I can pull from savings for the difference, and we'll replace it slowly, together. You will hand Mr. Patel the money, and your apology will be whole sentences." He nodded hard, grateful for a structure that felt like a bridge rather than a lecture. She took Miss Chen's card and dialed, leaving a message in a voice that surprised her with its calm. "We have the envelope. We understand Rose's terms. Jason will begin at the hospice. Please advise." Then she called the volunteer coordinator she knew. "He'll mop," Elena said. "He'll sit and listen. He'll sign where he needs to sign." On speaker, the coordinator answered warmly. "There's training Thursday at 9. Tell him to bring comfortable shoes and an open heart." Jason closed his eyes and nodded like a man accepting weight. He stood, then sat again, then practiced under his breath. "Mr. Patel, I'm sorry I lied. I knew the ring's meaning, and I chose myself. I'm paying today, and I will do better." The words trembled but stayed standing. Elena listened, unshed tears. She allowed herself one hand on his shoulder, brief and firm. "Better is built," she said. Bring Patel's counter, cash and contrition, then the hospice halls and Ms. Chen's folder. Jason inhaled, steadied, and chose daylight over dazzle. Morning broke clean and ordinary, which felt like grace. Jason and Elena stood beneath Mr. Patel's lamp, the ticket on the counter, cash in Jason's open hand. He kept his eyes level. "I lied," he said. "I knew the ring's meaning and chose myself. I'm here to make it right." The bills made a soft slap and settled. Mr. Patel counted without hurry, then looked up the way a man checks a bridge. "Good to see a promise kept," he said. He slid the velvet tray. The decoy ring winked, humbled by light. "Bring her home." Outside, Jason pressed a second wad of crumpled pawn cash into Elena's palm. This was the part one kept to look normal. It didn't help. She folded the money, neither praising nor punishing. "Normal is earned," she said. "We'll use this for what's next." What's next wore an apron. At Green's Market he bagged groceries until his forearms ached and the scanner's beep drilled a tunnel through his pride. Cold brushed his knuckles. Plastic whispered. Oranges rolled. An elderly woman pressed $1 into his hand for carrying milk to her trunk. At home he lined tips on the table, counted twice, then slid them into an envelope labeled Patel, Lex, phone. Elena added a small amount from savings and a sigh that didn't scold. "Brick by brick," she said. He nodded. The hospice halls smelled like lemon cleaner and lavender sachets tucked into drawers by optimistic daughters. The coordinator handed him a badge. "Start with mopping," she said. "Dignity starts on the floor." He sloshed the bucket and caught a laugh from a doorway. "Rookie mistakes," a voice rasped. Mr. Ridley waved him in, a veteran with a crew cut that defied time and eyes that had learned mercy. "Read to me, recruit," he said, tapping a paperback. Jason began, tripped over a sentence, reset his pace. "At ease," Ridley grinned. "Breathe between lines. The words won't desert you." Later, when Ridley's hands trembled, Jason steadied the cup without comment. "There you go," the old man said. "Your generation knows tech. Turns out hands are still required." He held other hands, papery, warm, and learned the good silence that follows honest listening. On day 3 he met Lex in daylight at the Maple Diner. Coffee steamed, pie turned slowly inside a humming case, indifferent to bravado. "No games," Jason said. "Here's the first payment. Next installments every Friday. If you want theater, I'm leaving." He kept his hand on the envelope until Lex took it. The grin never reached those eyes, but something like respect moved behind them. "Don't be late," Lex said. "I won't," Jason answered, and felt the sentence seat itself like a post. Hours accumulated like honest miles. Ms. Chen stopped by the hospice with a clipboard and a quiet smile, initialing boxes while pretending not to notice his red eyes. "Keep going," she said. "You're doing math that matters." At night he wrote and rewrote a letter he would never send. "Grandma, I'm sorry I sold glass and treated our story like spare change. I want to be the man you thought I could be. I'm learning that character is what you do when nobody claps." The page blurred, he kept writing. Saturday brought a family dinner that tasted like risk. Aunt Mara set down a pot roast and her opinions. Cousins came with laughter clipped short by curiosity. Before forks could find plates, Jason stood, hands visible, voice steady. "I stole Grandma's ring," he said. "I pawned it and lied. She was ahead of me, we had the decoy. I redeemed it. I'm paying everyone back. I'm serving at the hospice. I'm sorry." The words emptied the room of whispers. Aunt Mara nodded once, tears brighter than reprimand. "There's my boy," she said. Elena's mouth trembled and held. Someone squeezed his shoulder, somebody else passed the rolls like a truce. Mornings, Elena handed him a thermos that smelled like hope and heat. She tucked a note around it, proud of the hours nobody sees. On break he unfolded it and let himself smile without defense. One afternoon he came home to a pan of lemon bars cooling, sugar shining like frost. "Bribes help," he said, and Elena laughed, the first sound in weeks that wasn't carrying weight on its head. They ate one each, careful, then two, less ceremonious. By twilight, The apartment felt taller. The singer sat against the wall, its secret returned to felt and faith. Jason's hands were nicked, his feet sore, his phone quiet. He added a line to the letter he wouldn't send. Today I held a hand that let go without fear. I want that kind of courage. He sealed the page in an envelope addressed to nothing and slid it between recipe cards as if courage could hide beside lemon bars. On the fridge, the list thinned, boxes ticked. Respect did not rush him, but it walked beside him now. When Elena glanced up and saw him laughing at a small joke he told on himself, she let the sound land. It did not erase the scar, it made a shape around it. And when Ms. Chen called to schedule the final meeting, the clock inside the house changed key. The stone still waited to be set, the lesson was finding its setting too. In the morning, they would walk in together, ready for daylight again. The jade plant watched from Ms. Chen's windowsill as papers made a gentle skyline on the round table. Receipts, a signed hospice log, a note from Mr. Patel, proof of work laid out like quiet bricks. Jason set the last envelope down, palms open. Ms. Chen nodded, eyes warm. Your grandmother planned for daylight, she said. You've stepped into it. She slid a cream envelope across, Rose's final letter, and a second folder clipped with instructions. With this, I release the funds she reserved for you and the right to set the real diamond. She tapped the folder once. Spend kindly, save faithfully, give quietly, she read from Rose's neat postscript. Jason exhaled, surprised by relief. Rules felt like railings now, not bars, not scolding, or cages. Elena unsealed the flap. Rose's voice arrived in ink. I am proud of every hour you gave that no one applauded. Set the stone with the scratch at 9 o'clock pointing forward. Inside the band, if there is room, ask for 3 words, character over gold. Wear it when you need courage, pass it when you speak courage, shoulder, color rising slowly back into his face, and then he took the felt-wrapped stone from the saucer Ms. Chen had prepared. He didn't pocket it. He turned to his mother and placed the weight in her palm. It belonged to your mother before it belonged to any of us, he said. Please, set it your way. Elena closed her fingers, the old circle meeting new light. She thought of singer thread, lemon bars, and the way love holds even when hands shake. At Patel Jewelers the bell chimed like a blessing. Mr. Patel set the lamp, hummed his small thinking tune, and aligned history. Steam whispered, the loop blinked, the diamond woke without fuss. Scratch at 9, pointing forward, he repeated. A map, then. He engraved inside the band while they watched the tiny arm carve 3 honest words, character over gold. When he slid the ring onto Elena's finger, daylight found it through the front window and settled there as if coming home. Daylight suits it, Mr. Patel said. And you. That evening the table wore a simple meal, soup that tasted like patience, bread that remembered hands, lemon bars dusted with sugar that looked like forgiveness. The ring tapped the bowl once, a soft note. Aunt Mara squeezed Jason's shoulder, cousins pass stories without the old edge. He spoke when it felt right. I did harm and I'm repairing it, he said, not to be applauded but to be accountable. Elena poured coffee and let her laugh return in small, true pieces. It felt like the house had learned its taller shape. Later, alone in the quiet, Elena turned the ring and found the comet scratch with her thumb, pointing not to what they'd lost, but to where they could go. Wealth without values had almost bent them double, dignity had lifted them back up. Respect had not come from bills counted but from hours given. Love had outlasted neon and noise, refusing to be pawned. Dear listener, you know this, money can buy many things, but it cannot purchase character or repair trust with a receipt. The inheritance that endures is the one we carry in our choices, dignity, respect, and love over greed. When the world dims the room and glass dazzles, choose daylight. And if you've lived a moment when character mattered more than cash, when you kept a promise, told a hard truth, or forgave a debt, share it below. Your story might be the lamp someone else needs tonight.